Yes, indeed. You are watching live on KEXP at home. My name is Larry Mizell Jr., host of the afternoon show, and I'm so happy to present to you Amaarae. How are you doing?
Hi, how are you? I'm doing
Fantastic.
incredible. Thank you so much for having me.
For sure. Thanks for beaming in. You're coming live from Accra, Ghana, right?
Yes, sir.
Right on, right on. Well, I want to get into the fantastic session that you recorded for us, so let's get into it.
Awesome. Let's do it.
All right.
Talk, but talk is cheap. And I need favor from no one but God, plus I got me. Talking all the time. What else have you done for your niggas at the mud and your people's outside? Too much energy being wasted, too much time. Too many enemies from friendship, flooding my lines up. They're messing up my mental space, man. They blow my eye. Too much energy being wasted on business not mine. All the diamonds in the world don't outshine me. Every blessing's gotta fall so I don't sleep. Oh no. I want to be alone. I want you to just leave me alone. I want to be alone. Why don't you just leave me alone? I want to be alone. I want you to just leave me alone. I want to be alone. Why don't you just? I'm tryna love you like a gangster, praying on my prayers till they answer. I'm on my knees and it's still bleeding, praying enemies say they won't test me, so they asking God please, asking God please. Why me, why me, why me? Too much energy being wasted, too much time. Too many enemies from friendship, say they flooding my lines up now. You messing up my mental space, man. You blow my heart. Too much energy being wasted, my business not mine. All the diamonds in the world don't outshine me. Every blessing's gotta fall so I don't sleep. Oh no. I want to be alone. I want you to just leave me alone. I want to be alone. I want you to just leave me alone. I want to be alone. I want you to just leave me alone. I want to be alone. Why don't you just leave me alone? Oh no. I want you to just leave me alone. Why don't you just leave me alone?
Sad you broke my heart.
Shawty messing on my head, snorted on my coke, took my money. Every single day, sure I'm wanting go. Confess, show me a bunty. Baby, I know be right, I be a bunchy. I am me logo licky lover, got the right for your monkey. I be straight to the point, there's no be long thing. What do you order, DP Papa? DP Papa, hey. when you wanna, when you wanna, when you wanna, why your waist? He told me why your waist. Oh, mommy, don't take I'm pissing now. I do want me come my number one. Why you ma? Why you ma? Find you ma, yeah. Find you ma. When you wanna, 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 why your waist? Why ya? When you wanna, hey. When you wanna, when you wanna, why your waist? Why ya? Why ya? When you wanna, hey. Every day you just search for my body, oh. You dey look my money, oh. Want me to give you honey, oh. Every day is you I'm wanting, oh. I'm wanting, oh. Wanting to, wanting to. When you wanna, when you wanna, when you wanna, when you wanna, why my waist? Why my waist? Oh. When you wanna, when you wanna, when you wanna, when you wanna, why my waist? Why my waist? When you wanna, when you wanna, oh. When you wanna, 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 why ya? When you wanna, 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 why your waist?
All right, we're here with Amaarae. You just saw a couple fantastic songs from that great session. What was the setting you recorded that in? I loved that.
So actually, my creative director and my road manager, his sort of mentor slash best friend, has a home in a place called WURLD, right? And his brother he's an artist and he works with scraps and metals. So he creates sculptures out of scraps and metals. So the place that we actually recorded that was sort of like his scrapyard slash workshop where he creates these sculptures. Yeah.
That's fantastic. Yeah, it had the vibe of a workshop. I was like, okay, are you making art here? That's cool. That was a really cool setting.
Oh, thank you.
Excellent.
Thank you.
So you just a few months ago released your debut album, The
Yes,
Angel
sir.
You Don't Know.
Yes, sir.
I love that title. Is that
Oh,
you?
thank
Are you
you.
the angel that we don't know?
I think we're all the angels we don't know, you know. It's more so it's more less about me and more so just about I think the human spirit and existence in general. You know, we all have our good sides and our bad sides, and just the human spirit and experience is very nuanced, and that's what it's about.
Right on. A lot of nuance comes through the album. A lot of experience, you know, ups and downs, heartbreak, you know, feeling oneself, all that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Let's back up for a second. You were born in what, the Bronx?
Yes, sir, the Bronx, New York.
Okay. And then after that, you were kind of in between, what, Accra and Atlanta?
Yes, sir.
Okay. That's a really cool mix of influences and settings that you've got there. Has that kind of, I would have to assume that's informed your approach, your style, how you've approached the different music scenes you've been around.
Absolutely, 100%. So my introduction to music really came when I was, young and living with both of my parents back here in Accra. And I always tell people, like, my dad is a huge music fan. And he'll listen to everything from like Gwen Stefani to like James Brown to Al Green to Evelyn Champagne King, to Joe and John B. So I was always listening to music around him. And my mom loves jazz. So my mom really introduced me to Billie Holiday, who is one of my biggest influences of all time. Ella Fitzgerald, Lena Horne, Count Basie, Duke Ellington, Miles Davis, John Coltrane, Charlie Christian, Coleman Hawkins. So, and then I had my mom's younger brothers at the time, and this was probably like 98, 99. All had went to college in the States, and they used to come back and they'd bring magazines and they'd bring boxes of like CDs, and it was all hip hop. So like Jay-Z, Fat Joe, Eve, Murder Inc., like Ja Rule, and like just that time period. And when I left Accra and moved to first Atlanta, that was sort of the height of the crunk era, where it was like, Lil Jon and the East Side Boys, and T.I. was coming out at that time. Young Jeezy was just on the cusp. Gucci Mane was just on the cusp. And I was surrounded by that as well, being like a young kid from Ghana, coming into that and learning about that and enjoying that. And Outkast also had a very sort of alternative pop take to hip hop at the time. And that was also really interesting to take that in. And we stayed in Atlanta for maybe 2-3 years. And then I moved to New Jersey, Morristown, and just straight up complete suburbia. I think it was like maybe 10 Black people in the whole neighborhood. And that was a whole different experience because I was exposed to a lot of rock music, and I remember very distinctively, like the girl that I sat next to in like science class or something like that, she loved this record by The Outsiders, I Don't Wanna Lose Your Love Tonight. And she used to put me on like just a bunch of different really interesting rock records and pop records. So yeah, like just my life and just the different places that I've lived and traveled have really, really, really influenced and informed the way that I approach my music.
Yeah, the crates of your influence are really deep. I read an interview where you were mentioning you mentioned Dolly Parton, Fall Out Boy, and the Raincoats. And I was like, oh, there's a lot going on here. Yeah.
Yeah. I love music. Like, I don't care what it is. It could be country, it could be rock, it could be hip hop, it could be folk music, it could be Indian music. I don't care as long as it just sounds good.
For sure. And you kind of fuse all of that into your style so
yes,
seamlessly.
Sir.
Yeah. What do you call like your style of music? Because it doesn't neatly fit into like Afro pop or Afro beat, obviously.
Right. No, it does not. So I guess, just for lack of a categorization, I just call it Afrofusion because at the end of the day, I'm still an African woman. I'm still an African youth. And the core and the root of what I do is still inherently African. So it's just kind of me taking my roots and my culture and then taking all these other things that I've absorbed over time and just melding them together and creating this sonic amalgamation that's just, an array of experiences. So I guess it is Afrofusion. It is Afrofusion, essentially.
That's a perfect term for it.
Yeah.
Did you ever experience in, coming to the States and then going back to Ghana, were you ever kind of like othered? Were you too American in one setting, too Ghanaian in another, to other people? Was that something that ever was a thing you had to go through?
It's interesting. So when I first moved to America, I was definitely othered because my accent, I had a very thick African accent, and I'd get laughed at a lot by the kids. I remember very distinctively, like someone definitely calling me an African booty scratcher. And, just over time, as I guess my accent kind of changed and I got a bit more accustomed to the culture, I started to fit in a little bit more. But when I came back to Ghana, it was really interesting. What I found is that I was underexposed in comparison to the kids that I was growing up around. These kids were traveling to so many different countries, and they had so many different experiences. They had eaten all types of food. They were listening to all types of music. They were watching every movie from every part of the world, even though they were pirating those and downloading them illegally. They were just so hungry for education and culture that when I got here, it was time for me to catch up. Like, I didn't even start to get into music until I moved to Ghana. There were kids in my school, they would borrow laptops from the library and go into the back of the computer lab and download, Fruity Loops or Logic, and they were playing around with this equipment and trying to figure out, and they'd be recording on like webcam mics or like, those headphone mics back in the day. So here is actually where I really learned how to push myself artistically, because the DIY culture here is so it's great, and it's huge, and people are always having to learn to do things for themselves and learn to push themselves and having to go out and hunt for, culture and music and stuff like that.
Right. That makes sense. That people would just be more worldly. When you go back to Ghana, I think Americans get very used to their culture being pop culture, and they're just like, we're not raised to be curious, at least not as I feel like maybe we were more curious at one point, but not so much anymore.
Right.
So did you start making music in Ghana?
Yes, when I was 15.
Okay.
When I was 15, one of the producers actually who's on my album, his name is Kuvi. He was the very first person that recorded me and gave me a beat when I was 15 years old, and he was about 18 at the time. So it was a really cool full circle moment for us to do a record for The Angel You Don't Know.
And I love how all the kind of DIY instinct around you inspired you, because as I've seen you observe, that's all punk rock. That the spirit of it. That's what punk is about.
Right, absolutely. 100%.
Right on. Well, let's get into a few more songs. What do you say?
Let's do it.
Okay. We're live on KEXP at home. We're here with Amaarae. Let's do it.
Shawty wanna make high grace. Shawty wanna do my day. Shawty be on top of my mountain, but never ever wanna come my way. Shawty wanna make high grace, but never make her do my day. Oh, hot tea alright, and I wanna pay for. I got attention if you make more time. I know it's fancy, I wanna make more. Push up on me till I'm feeling it. Drop it and look how you killing it. Told me that you need a space. I'm out here pulling my way. I left my man on the phone. I left my girls in LA. Tell me you into the way that I'm on. You wanna keep me in play. Can't keep that body in place. I gotta move out the way. Leave the one I'm with. Jumping shit. Done with this. More than done. Pour me another drink. Take another sip. If you wanna hit the money, go and party, pop a pot and Abu Dhabi. That's enough to keep me shawty. I'ma go ahead and mess with you. We gotta sweep the money up. Light my body up and try it. Light my body up and try it. You gon' make me leave the one I'm with. Jumping ship, pull up and pop it in place. Show me how dirty you play, please. Just like this, baby, just like this. Be the one I'm with. Cause you gon' make me leave the one I'm with. Jumping shit, done with this. More than done, pour me another drink. Take another sip, and another sip. Hot tea alright, and I wanna pay for. I got attention if you make more time. I know it's fancy, I wanna waste more. Push up on me till I'm feeling it. Dropping it, look. Shawty wanna make her craze. Shawty wanna day my day. Shawty wanna top of my matter, but no one go my way. Shawty wanna make her. Oh, jumping ship, wasn't done with this. Be the one I'm with, you got me jumping ship. Get inside, we're riding through the city. We're gonna ride it off and skate a while. I really wanna kiss you, come on, kiss me. Let's turn this fucking city upside down. I'm a crazy girl. I'm gonna rock your crazy world. 1, 2, 3, go. Go ahead, I know you want it. There is no other way, you just have to break us down. Go ahead, I'll be on it. There is no other way, you just have to tear us down. Oh, I'll be a junkie. Go ahead, baby, just wanna get in my head. Oh, I'll be a junkie. Singing out to you, the voices in my head. No, not me, no, how. It's not for me, but you find me. Not me, no, how. It's not for me, baby, I'm a crazy girl. I'm gonna rock your crazy world. Baby, I'm a crazy girl. I'm gonna rock your crazy world. Yeah. You'll find a way. You'll find it. No, ain't not me, oh no, not for me. You'll find a way. You'll find a way. 'Cause baby, I'm a crazy girl. I'm gonna rock your crazy world. Crazy, 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 crazy girl. I'm gonna rock your crazy world. Yeah. You'll find a way. Yeah. You'll find a way. You'll find a way. You'll find a way. Yeah. You'll find a way. 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 Yeah. You'll find a way. You'll find a way. Just bounce with it, 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 bounce with it. This shit hot loud, I'm with the squad, put this on God, I get it. Without a plan or a penny, rackets on rackets I'm spinning. Can I buy mommy a Bentley? Only time will tell, on my way to hell, on my way out jail, I just dropped 50 on bail. So my nigga free, no AJ. Back to the basics, the base, babe. Face it, babe, I made it, babe. The baby on any will make it, babe. Get naked, babe, and then sing my name. Back to the basics, the base, babe. Face it, babe, I made it, babe. The baby on any will make it, babe. Get naked, babe, and then sing my name, yeah. Bitch, I'm in my bag on 10. I can't even lack, I ain't blessed. Rolls Royce windows tinted, I'm going down. Every day is my night flex. 4 feet on the right, I sex. Jumping out the bag, bumping out the pip on the prowl. X on X, I bleed. Try test me, bitch, please. My neck brace is freezy. Free my nigga B. BT Pablo Steez. Free Khalid Monique. Call me, baby, if you won't reach me. See, I don't write songs, bitch, I make memories. I don't like those, cause they write up with cheese. I don't, but I drink. But I automatic ripple. Pull up in a fist. whisker. Kiss your kitty whispers. Wipe up on her pretty pistol. Rock you steady singing whispers and I'm gone, yeah. Bitch, I'm in my bag on 10. I can't even lag, I'm blessed. Rolls Royce windows tinted. I'm going down. Every day is my night flex. Fuffies in a ride, I say. Jumping at the jag. Pip on the prow. Racks on racks, I bleed. Try test me, bitch, please. My neck brace is freezing. Free my nigga P. PT Pablo Steve. Free Calimoni. Call me, beat me. If you won't reach me like this. Automatic whipper. Pull up in a fisker. Kiss your kitty whispers. Wipe up on a pretty pistol. Rock you steady singing whispers. Then I'm gone.
Thank you.
And we are live on KEXP at home. We're here with Amaarae from her home in Accra,
Yes,
Ghana. Thank you again for joining us. Fantastic performance.
Thank you. Once again, thank you guys so much for having me.
Of course, yeah. We've been rocking your record in rotation. I really liked your performance there of Crazy World. You really tap into the punk thing we were just talking about.
Right.
How did that come about?
How did Crazy World come about, you mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So Crazy World actually, a producer friend that I work with had introduced me to this very incredible artist called Rina Sawayama. She's a British Japanese artist. And I had listened to her record during lockdown, and I just loved the infusions of like very early 2000s sort of rock and roll or like punk rock energy. And at the time I was also listening to this Icelandic band called Dreamwife, and they're incredible. 3 girls, and they're just like balls to the wall, like rock, right? So I was like, it would be interesting to take these influences and to fuse them in my album. And what I had done with Crazy World is I didn't think that African audiences would be too responsive to a full rock record. So I just made the intro of the album and the outro of the album, I made them rock records. And then somewhere in between the album, I snuck in a little sort of indie rock joint just to kind of ease them into that final rock record. And Crazy World just came about when I was listening to another really cool band called Tilly and the Wall, and they have this record called Pot Kettle Black, and I was like, oh, I would love to do something like that. So I linked up with the producer that I work with. His name is Yellow Shoots, and I was just like, hey, can we do something like this? And it's a funny story the way that it was written. I went on my Instagram live one day and I was playing the instrumental, and a bunch of my fans were just like typing in lyrics. Like I'd hum a melody and they'd be like, oh, use this or say this. And I was like, all right, well, let's write it together. And that's how that came about. So it was like a really cool moment. Yeah. So Crazy World is just, it's about my crazy world and just the whole amalgamation or creation of The Angel You Don't Know and bringing that to an end. So yeah, it's,
Right on. I love how you crowdsource that and, directly with the fans.
Yeah.
Right on. And you're talking about kind of sneaking in different styles. It's kind of subversive. You're kind of like, sneaking this bit in there. You're taking influence from everywhere. You are a voracious music listener, obviously. How has reception on the continent been for your mix of styles?
I think it's been interesting. So I'm from Accra, but a lot of people actually often mistake me to be a Nigerian just because of how big the support there is. And when the record came out, especially Nigerian audiences immediately took to it, and they just enjoyed sort of this ballsy combination of all of these different types of styles and genres. And then it just kind of started to siphon out into like Tanzania and South Africa and Kenya, and all those different places are actually responding much quicker than maybe, let's say, here in Accra. You know what I mean? Like anytime I see people spinning records in the club, it'll be like in like Namibia or in Cote d'Ivoire. Yeah, so it's really interesting, the international appeal that it has, as opposed to like, getting love directly at the home base.
For sure. And I'm sure all that is getting sewed up. And I mean, pop and just music from Africa there's a huge groundswell right now. This year, KEXP started an Afrobeat show over at Afrobeats. Fantastic show. Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So, you see this international profile for music from the continent coming, and I love that you are in the mix doing your own thing. And I think that's all going to come around. And, you're enjoying a huge amount of international support from what I see.
Oh, yes, for sure. And I'm super appreciative of it. And even being able to do this with KEXP, I appreciate it so much as well. And I appreciate the support and you guys spinning the records also. For
sure. Absolutely. Music is music, I got to ask this. You got a great song from your debut tape, Passion Fruit Summers, called Fluid. Awesome video. That song is kind of about gender presentation and speaking to that and androgyny, things like that. And I know that Ghana is a conservative country. There's legislation on the books banning gay sex and everything. And I don't know how serious the enforcement of that is, but I'm sure there's still people who still probably are feel free and supported to harass LGBTQ folks and everything. Have you had to deal with any kind of backlash because of the message of that song in particular?
You know what? That's actually my most popular song in this country, which blew my mind, which blew my absolute mind. And what I started to realize was, as the video made its rounds, I started to see more men get in touch with a more colorful side of themselves. I started to see a lot of guys in yellow hair, green hair, blue hair, multicolored hair. And it was just so interesting to me because if there was an audience that I would have thought would have taken to the record, I would have thought it would have been mainly females and probably members of the LGBTQ community who finally feel like, oh, here's a voice that we can connect to, and that's sort of opening up the space for all types of expression. But it was men. It was men that were posting the record and getting their hair dyed. And I found it so intriguing. Like, even when I'd go to spaces, it would be men that would come up to me and be like, I really love what you're doing. And I think it's so cool. And it's inspired me to do this. So I'm wondering, like, are people oppressed or suppressing certain expressions just because of, what gender norm in our society calls for? And I thought it was interesting that I was kind of an outlet for that, for a very unlikely consumer base,
For sure. That's fantastic. And that's so informative, when you get that kind of feedback for when you're taking a risk like that. And that's so cool too, because, all of that is a colonial overlay. You know what I mean? That's not from the native culture anyway. So it's cool to kind of get around that.
Wait, when you say a colonial overlay, how do you mean?
I mean, homophobia, generally, fear around same-sex relations and any kind of non-traditional, gender presentation.
Right, you're absolutely right.
In my understanding.
No, you're absolutely right. That's very true. And it's crazy because I think a lot of Africans don't know, but if you go back way, way, way back into our culture, feminine or sort of cross-reference gender presentation was so normal in our society. And then also women often heading armies and being the heads of tribes was a very normal thing. And then also like male warriors having close relationships or sometimes even being more than close was a very normal thing. So when you do say a colonial overlay of fear of presentation and just, sexuality in general, you're absolutely right. Yeah.
Right on. Tell me what's next? What do you got cooking?
So I do have a video coming out for one of the songs on the project called Sad Girls Love Money. The video is incredible. We have some really cool merch coming out for fans as well. We also have, down the line, we have, there might be another project. I'm not going to promise anything, but we do have like a cool idea for a project in mind, and we're sort of working on putting that in motion. And we also have a really cool limited edition merch drop with like leather jackets and just a bunch of really cool coasters and trading cards for fans, just cool memorabilia that they can collect around the release of the album and just to sort of remember this time. And fingers crossed, if the world is back open, I am scheduled to start going on tour in September. So I'm hoping,
Hope so.
Yeah.
Right on. I know you must be missing the live music experience, not just performing it, but seeing it, I'm sure.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. I made this album with a live audience in mind. So it's kind of a bummer to not be able to play it, to an audience, but
sure.
Yeah.
I've talked to a bunch of artists recently, obviously, that made records expecting to do what you do, get out there and share it with people, and lockdown has prevented that. How has lockdown been in Ghana?
So lockdown in Ghana started out pretty relaxed. We actually, I want to say by November, had the virus under control. We were going out as normal. People were starting to not have to wear their masks. We were starting back to have large gatherings, and there was hopes for being able to do concerts later down the line, hopefully December. And then we opened up our borders, and we had people from the UK and the US coming in with these dangerous strains. And now we're back to square one, where we're having to go into a full sort of lockdown and preventative mode. So yeah, it's been a ride. It's been a ride.
Yeah, I'm sure we're all on it to some extreme degree worldwide.
Absolutely.
When you mentioned Americans coming in specifically, I meant to ask you this earlier. I know that there's a lot of initiatives around repatriation, African Americans repatriating to Ghana specifically. Have you seen a lot of that? Do you have any people from the States that have been entertaining that or anything?
Oh yeah, a lot of them actually. But I always say to people, the grass is always greener.
For sure.
There are a lot of people over here that are ready to leave as well, or that would still consider America, irrespective of everything that's going on over there, heaven in comparison to just the lack of structural orientation that we're faced with here. And just, sometimes almost an assault on the youth culture, and just how we're trying to break boundaries in all arenas: tech, music, art, fashion, real estate, whatever, you name it. But there's sort of this oppression that's coming with, this resurgence or this renaissance of creativity in all fields. And so I don't know, it's a tricky one. It's a tricky one. I think Black people just overall, we find ourselves in a bit of a pickle in terms of where we stand, in this world.
For sure.
There are a lot. Yeah. There's a lot going on against us, but
For sure. And trying to envision a place for us in the world that isn't a trap in some form or fashion can be really difficult.
Yeah, and I don't think Africa is the answer the way that everyone thinks it is.
I know that's definitely been mythologized in ways that I'm sure probably, not appreciated and not realistic. But I really appreciate your perspective on this, and, you sharing that with me.
Thank you.
Well, right on. I'm really happy to get to rock with you and chat with you. Your music is fantastic. It's a fantastic session. I look forward to hearing more from you, and hopefully one day seeing you here in the live room here at KEXP.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you so much, Larry, and thank you to the entire team, to Scott and Jim as well, who produced, who produced and ran the tech on this. I appreciate you for having me, and I appreciate KEXP. Thank you all for the love, and make sure you stream The Angel You Don't Know.
Yes, indeed. Right on. Thank you so much. This is live on KEXP at home. We were just talking to Amaarae. My name is Larry Mizell Jr. See ya.
All righty.
All right.
Discover new music at listener-powered KEXP.org.